There were none before us, there'll be none after us. Therefore, that makes us the one and only, certified, bona fide, and indubitably qualified to bring that knowledge with a whole lot of wisdom. We are guaranteed to bring the satisfaction with a whole lot of action. Welcome to Elevated Vibes. Today, I have the pleasure of being your captain. Rich is off trying beignets and touring the world and listening to jazz, but we here hard at work, still raising the consciousness one mind at a time.
Oh, yeah. Good to me.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
So today we are joined in the studio by Mr. Charles Bracy, attorney, scholar, Christian, father, good friend. Thinks he's smart, but went to De La Salle, but we ain't gonna say nothing about that. All right. And lawyer, and has been practicing quite some time. I think he was around when Moses gave out the 10 Commandments. And of course, in the co-chair, we have Tim as the co-pilot. So we're gonna ask that you sit back, relax, open up your ears, and be prepared to be elevated. This is Elevated Vibes on Intellectual Radio, and we invite you to join the conversation tonight. Tonight, we will be talking about marriage, divorce, but particularly paternity fraud. That's right, paternity fraud. Or it's like we to say when we're downtown, baby mama, daddy may be caught. All right? So join us here in the studio. Give us a call at 708 223-8953. Again, that's 708-223-8953. I'd just like to start with a brief little introduction. Doing some research for this case, I came across a couple of articles wrongly accused, the damaging impact of false paternity claims on men. There was a guy named D'Angelo Smith, found out that the child wasn't his, but still had to pay child support. There's a case out of Texas. His name was, and give me a second, Mr. Cruz, and he found out that he took the DNA test and it wasn't his, but he still had to pay child support. Apparently, the notice went to an address that he wasn't at. You and I know about this. The default was entered against him. The child support continued to run and accumulate, and I think he had to wait. Like, he didn't find out about it till he was pulled over by the police and found out that there was a warrant for his arrest. And the officer told him that he was a deadbeat child, and found out, went to court and said, hey, I don't have any children, and said, yes, you do. And he was found to be responsible for this child support to the tune of $65,000. A couple of other articles I came across. A man in Tennessee signed a voluntary acknowledgement of paternity. For those of you that don't know, just when you're in court and there's an issue of paternity, you can either, here in Illinois, you can take a paternity test, but sometimes you sign a voluntary acknowledgement of paternity. And after 30 days, that's it. The court loses its jurisdiction to determine whether or not you are the father. And if you find out years later, guess what? You're the father. Man in Tennessee signed this agreement. Despite presenting DNA evidence in court, he was required to continue paying child support. Because the period to rescind the acknowledgement had passed, the case prompted legislative changes in Tennessee, removing the 5-year statute of limitations. A case out of Florida, after paying child support for 11 years, a man successfully had his support order set aside when it was revealed he was not the biological father. The court emphasized the necessity of substantial evidence. Ohio passed a law to relieve victims of paternity fraud from child support obligations when DNA tests prove they are not the biological fathers. So, first, let's talk about divorce. Mr. Bracy, you have been involved in the divorce process for numerous years. Coming into it, the argument that we always hear is that the courts are biased against the fathers.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that? What is your opinion?
Well, after the amendments came about in 2016, I think it's really a jump ball now. Before that, going back to even the 90s, as far as you can go back, the presumption for everything was for the woman, everything, whether it was custody, child support, visitation, maintenance, whatever it was, everything was really on the side of the woman. But when they made the amendments in 2016, it really made it more of a jump ball. So if you get into a divorce or a child support case or a custody case, you really got about a 50-50 chance now. If you got a good lawyer and if you're in front of a fair judge. Now, both of those may be variables that mess you up. But it's I've been practicing since 2008, not since Moses dropped the 10 Commandments, since '08. And so I would tell you over the last, I guess it's 18, whatever it is, years, the or 2007, the men have gotten more and more power, more rights as time is going on. I think that what happened. One thing that happened in our society was that women were getting more jobs and more money, and so they weren't this was not the 1940s or 30s where you had the lady at home and the husband cheated with the secretary, and now we got a dissipation claim because he gave $10,000 worth of diamonds to his lady friend. It's different now. In fact, most of my cases, the woman is making the money, whether it's a custody case or a divorce case or whatever. And they come in to sound like those old guys from back in the day, like trying to figure out how they can get out of this case without giving them anything. So no, now it's changed. The only thing that really has stayed the same, and that's very archaic, is that issue of voluntary acknowledgement of paternity. And I would tell anybody, never sign that document. I don't care if you are stuck in an elevator underground with this lady for 10 months straight and she has the baby while you're there. Don't sign the voluntary acknowledgement.
10 months? Don't sign it.
Because things happen. And so I've had many guys get duped and they get bought into the game. So let's talk a little law with respect to the VAPs. Understand that when you want to set it aside, actually it's really 60 days that the case law says it's the 60. So after 60 days, what you do is you bring a motion under 214.01 to set it aside. You don't bring a motion to establish a non-existent of paternity. You bring a 214.01 to set it aside, and you have to bring something to the table. Like you may argue fraud or duress as a part of your 214.01. When you do a 214.01, a 214.01, by the way,
I was going to say you need to define
motion to vacate. It's a motion to vacate or set aside an order or judgment. If you bring in a 214.01, you got to basically say, here's my defense or my claim. And so you may kind of make your argument of undue influence or mistake of fact or fraud as a basis of it. And or you may say, hey, I got a DNA test. And so the DNA test says, I'm not the dad. And so what the courts, this is where it gets a little tricky. The courts sometimes will say, particularly after 2 years of knowing, certain facts about the child, you can't set it aside because they will say that you are now imputed the father as a matter of law. And I've seen that rule go all the way back. It's not new, by the way. I've seen even cases in the 70s, 80s, where guys were getting tripped up. They came in and said, hey, not my kid. In fact, I saw a case that happened in, I think, 1981, where a man came in and said, hey, this is not my kid. And at first, the judge was going along with it. And then he looked and he was like, wait a minute. This kid's like 7. Right. So I'm sorry, you lose. And you are the father. And the man had to pay child support all the years, all the college tuition, help with this, and that. But he never saw the kid because the kid was not his kid. And I think that that's really damaging, not only to the father, but to the child. Because you got this handcuffed father.
Right.
But not the real father. Your father could be LeBron James. You can have Barack Obama's your real dad. But you over here with Willie the plumber. And
nothing that's wrong with Willie the plumber.
But your dad is Barack Obama.
Right.
And so I think that it's wrong because it's hurting not only the man who is being imputed, it's hurting the child because he never has that relationship with his father like you did. You had a great father. So no, there's that to me is the big problem. Going back into the divorce realm, right now, they've changed a lot of things, as you know. They've changed the child support. It used to be just percentages, 28% for one,
33% for 2, right. 38% for 3.
They just would go up.
And it depended on if the child was in the same familial unit, or is it 33% for child A and then a different baby mama, child B might have their 33%,
Well,
so 60% of your check gone.
Well, the stupid thing about the old law was that it did not take into consideration about the fact that you may have children at your house that you are paying for. Like my daughter is sitting there, she's in private school, it's $1,000 a month. So back in the day, if I had to pay somebody child support, that was my problem. They didn't care. So the good thing about the new system is it does take into account not only kids that you're paying a child support order on, but kids that you're actually taking care of. So I think that's so I do like the new system in that regard. So what they do now,
and it's actually looking at the income of the other parent. That was a huge
They
change.
didn't do that before.
No. I had a case. In fact, one of my first cases, I had a lady who was so wealthy, she literally bought an island. I'm not playing with you. She was a very wealthy lady, and she was pursuing this gentleman who worked he was retired from the post office, and she was acting like she couldn't make it, and she was trying to get him arrested and all of a sudden the judge was allowed. This was like, oh wait, they were going for it, and they would put him, contempt or whatever. But now they kind of looking, they'd be like, lady, you're making like, a lot of money. And because she was a very successful business lady. But back in the day, no, they just strictly went by how much he was earning and how much he owed. But yes, you're right now. So now what they do is they take the income of the father and the mother, and they, if you can actually go to, you can Google Illinois child support estimator, and you can kind of plug in now and see how much money you might have to pay. But before then, it was just, everything was on the dad, and they didn't even consider, his situation or the mom's situation or the mom's finances. But now they put it together. So now the good thing is that the lawyers and the judges, we no longer do the calculation, because guess what? We're lawyers because we all flunked math. Otherwise we'd be doctors. But so it now goes into a system where the system tells us, hey, this is what the support should be, and it's a shared system, and I really like it because it also takes into consideration the overnight parenting. Because I used to have guys who'd have the child like all the time, and he still having to pay that 28%, and it made no sense that he was the one to take. Versus, I remember I had a cop who never saw his kid, and he still was paying 28%, and so that didn't make any sense. So they changed it.
Well, go ahead, John.
So, okay, so it takes about $100 for you to do a DNA check, right? I can trace my family back 300 years for $100. Why can't they just incorporate that with every child being born?
I agree totally. And
mandatory paternity test?
Yes,
yeah, mandatory.
I agree. They at the hospital. Now, you don't get the test back, so the woman, don't worry about it. You're not going to get a problem. You wouldn't get the results back for months. But I agree totally. I think that when the child is born, they should have paternity tests, because what happens with those VAPs is, the lady and the guy were dating, and, he was maybe not 100% sure about the child, but the child is born, he's overcome with emotion, he's signing, the voluntary acknowledgement of paternity, he's signing all kind of stuff that he shouldn't, because he's overcome with emotion. But I do think that they should really have it, to be the law that the child is tested if the parents are not married. If you're married, whatever.
Well, I disagree with that one respectfully, because there is still a presumption that a child born of the marriage is the child of the father.
Correct.
And I think that should be a rebuttable presumption. Now, actually, in researching this, France has actually passed a law that is illegal for a father to get a paternity test without the mother's permission or without the court's permission. Now, the rationale that France has put forth behind this is that it's destructive to the family unit, and it puts the child at the mercy of invasive procedure. Now, we know a paternity test is not an invasive procedure, but France's fear is that parents who are arguing or whatever, this destroys the family unit. One of the other arguments, and I'm glad you brought this up, just to play devil's advocate, is this in the best interest of the child? Let's say, Tim, you've been raising this child, from you thought it was your child, now she's 10, and you are getting divorced. And as we know, divorces are so friendly, is disclose that you are not the father, but yet she goes and files for child support, So is it in the best interest of the child? Because that's always, when we're in family law, the overarching consideration, no matter what is in the best interest of the child. There's 8 interests. I think it's 8 right now, and you go through them, and it's a balancing factor. Well, it could be argued that you have been an active and willing member in this child's life, so therefore there is no harm to you, and the harm that you suffer is outweighed by the harm that the child will suffer. And as we know, child support is the property interest of the child, which the court is vested in looking at. So Tim, how would you feel about that? Like, you done found out, you done raised this child and thought it was yours, but then come to find out it's not, but you're still on the hook for the child support.
Well, I think that it would be in the best interest of the child to know who their biological father is, just for medical reasons, genetics, being able to discover your actual family line. That would be important to me. Especially growing up, I would like to know where my family
But you're
is
on the hook
from.
for the child support. You've been involved in this child's life. You've acted, stepped in, but for this divorce, you would still be the let's call it the dad.
Me personally,
So,
I would, in 10 years, I would be emotionally invested in that child.
and you have no problem paying the child support obligation.
Now, no problem is kind of harsh. I probably would be very upset. I don't know. I would definitely feel a certain kind of way about that.
Well, fortunately, we're not in France, so I'm not worried about that. Honestly, I think that that's interesting, and I've been practicing for 18 years. And I really don't see a lot of issues within the families when there's a husband and wife, but of course, I'm sure that happens. Though I think the only reason why, I guess, and I'm not a senator, nobody ever voted me in, the only reason why they probably haven't passed any laws like that is because, as you know, there's a lot of divorces going on right now, and a lot of stuff going on with the families, and we don't have a best interest of the family factor, but we should. I mean, we should sometimes consider, look, let's try to not give them reasons, or let's say the husband takes, he goes to the extreme with this, and the wife is pissed off. She's like, "What do you mean? You think that I'm out here, tricking off? This is your child. Are you crazy?" So it could also have other effects, ripple effects in the family. But I don't, again, I'm just glad I'm not in France, so I don't have to argue that one. But right now we really just have it so that that VAP issue is really just it's an issue that's hurting a lot of unmarried men primarily right now. Once they've signed that, they got in the game, and they got into the game unknowingly a lot of times, and they get to be imputed the father. And as you know, not only are you on up for child support, there's a whole nother game that deals with college expenses.
Yeah.
And that's very, very, it'll buckle your knees to pay all this tuition. Some of these colleges, especially when you look at something like USC, the tuition is like $200,000. I mean, it's basically like a house. It's a mortgage. And so, depending on who you're dealing with, after you just got done paying 18 years of child support, for a child that's not yours, now here come another game. And so there's a lot going on, man. It's just a big mess. So,
should visitation be established along with child support? One of the issues that we always see is the mother not allowing the father to visit with the child, or that there was an agreement orally, and dad starts dating someone new, or something happens, and now he can't see the child. So should these two ride on the same track? And the reason I'm asking that, so that the audience has context, is what often happens is that the mother will file for child support, or she goes for benefits from the state. And the great state of Illinois is so well and so organized. They come after you, whoever she names as the father. We have had cases. One of the first cases Charles helped me out with when I first started was, we had a case where, and there's this presumption that if the state is serving you, that you got served. And in this case, my man was found out, like, I think he was about 3 or 4 years in arrears. But they said they got service on him and they served him at this address. And the man was like, you couldn't have served me at this address because I was a resident of one of your fine prison facilities, at the time that you served me, and it's like, I was in your custody and possession, but they served him and the state, and so now, again, you're really working against what we call statute of limitations, or SOL, as they say. You don't want to be SOL. And there's this issue now of, does the court have jurisdiction over you? And once you're behind in child support, you're behind. Like, it takes a minute to catch up. And the mom can waive it in certain cases, or you can appeal to the court and ask for them to terminate the child support. So should the issue of visitation and child support go hand in hand?
Well, Illinois law says that the answer is no. That they're separate issues when you're dealing with visitation and child support. So what sometimes people will do is they will hold the child hostage if the dad is not paying or is not current on child support. And so then one will bring an action either about the child support or about the visitation. And one of the first things that comes out of the judge's mouth is that these are separate issues. And so they don't like to intertwine them because they know people do that. They play that game. But here, I'll throw something else at you that will probably put me out of business. I think that there should be a rebuttable presumption that the parties have a 50-50. I mean, I really don't think that either party should have the right to just hold the child and pretend like this is my doll and you got to come pay me and da-da. I really like all the cases that I do where there's a 50-50 split. Those cases are golden. I don't have a child support issue. I don't have a visitation issue. We don't have custody to argue about. We don't argue about anything. We those cases come in, we sign a few documents, and they are put to sleep. So all they're doing with leaving the laws the way that they are is keeping me employed. Because if they ever figure out to just do a rebuttable presumption, I mean rebuttable. I mean, if you know the dude is crazy, or he's in and out of prison, or she has mental illness issues. Because I've had cases with a lot of ladies who have mental illness issues. Okay, come in. That's you can rebut that presumption. But I really think that there should be a rebuttable presumption. I know that the child, you don't like the child, but that's his father. That's the mother. And by the way, I want to tell you a little secret. Since they changed those laws in 2016, a lot of these men are getting the children, and they are becoming the ones keeping the moms away from the kids. And it just kills me that. And I mean, this goes across every spectrum of wealth or race. The dad gets the kid. He is like that old bitter lady from the 40s who was he will not let her see the child. And I'm like, man, come on. Like, I don't where are you guys coming from? I'm 51. And that's just not how we came up. That child needs the mother. As much as my daughter will tell you in a minute, I'm her favorite. But I know, guess what? She needs her mother. She needs my wife. My wife does all her braids and cooking stuff. I showed my wife how to cook salmon. She runs a circle around me now,
Right.
So you need your parent. But I wish that there was a 50-50, a rebuttable presumption that would kill all this child support noise, that would kill a lot of this visitation stuff. It would kill a lot of this mess about somebody being a deadbeat. Because what you don't understand as a parent is when you're portraying your child's parent as a bad person or an incompetent person or an evil person, you're telling that child that's what you are, because he's
half of that person.
You're half of that person. I've never seen a case where a parent will keep the child from the other parent, and then after the case is over with, that the child is doing well. That just doesn't happen. When I'll do a case, and I see that we got that fight where the father or the mother is keeping the other parent from the child, I'll come back around after the case is over, and I'll hear about little Jimmy doing this or little Jimmy's into that, and I'm like, yeah, you all were sitting there fighting instead of raising that child. You didn't take any time to raise a child. You were so busy fighting and hiring lawyers and being litigious and being mean, and you didn't raise them at all. And you can tell these kids are not getting raised because if you sit on the train long enough, you can just listen to them. You can tell like, nobody raised them. They sit and talk on the phone like they're talking on the couch. So nobody's raising them. But don't start me to preach it.
Okay. Okay. Well, then let me ask you this. What should be the consequences for paternity fraud?
Well,
should it be a crime? Should it be, and should the person well, in this case, it would be the mom who has committed the fraud. Should there be an investigation? Should mom have to pay this money back? Where are the consequences? Where is the dissuasive factor?
First of all, right now, there really are no real consequences for that action. So many men that, found themselves in that predicament where they're paying for a child that's not theirs, and then they later find out that it's not theirs, and they come to me and they say, Mr. Racer, what can I do? Well, if you look at the case law, you can sue the mother for misrepresentation or fraud. Good luck with that. But you're not going to get back the money, and more importantly, you're not going to get back the years, because in all honesty, normally you met this lady when you were 20 in your 20s. 18 years later, you're my age, and your life is basically over. You're old like me. You're through. So you can't really get it back. So that's why what you have to do first and foremost is be very, very particular about who you get into bed with, because there's a lot of ramifications, a lot of problems that can arise from that just that one simple act that takes 10 minutes or whatever it is, that has so many consequences. But right now there are none. So yes, to answer your question, should it be a crime? No, I would think that maybe a civil penalty. I would hate to give somebody a felony or misdemeanor for something like that, but if there would be a monetary fine, and or if the judge would allow you to calculate how much you paid and have a lien against her and a judgment against her, and make her pay it back, something civil like that maybe is something that would help. Because guess what? Those ladies don't like to pay. They don't like to pay money either. They talk about everybody being child deadbeat dads. They don't like to pay money either, because I represent them too. So maybe something civil in nature, but I wouldn't go so far as criminal in nature. But I would just simply tell somebody, be very careful who you mixing your gene pool with or who you getting in bed with, because that may or may not be your child.
I think that there should definitely be different consequences if you're single and have a child with somebody, or than if you are married and have a child with somebody, because you're in a contract in marriage, right? Yep. And you should be more liable for some extracurricular.
So you think the wife, in a case where the parties are married, a wife should have more consequences?
Yes.
Well, first and foremost, in a way. So are you talking about like if the wife is unfaithful?
Yes.
Well, we kind of do. It's a rarely used tool, but sometimes we'll have issues like dissipation. You know about this.
Dissipation of assets.
Where someone is dropping money for their significant other, and it all, again, a lot of these laws came about, way back in the day when you had like the executive, vice president of a bank, and he just went to Tiffany's and bought his secretary a $10,000 diamond ring, and through discovery that was found out. So the wife comes back and said, "Hey, you spent my $5,000 on this chick. I want it back." So we have a dissipation claim that's in place for that. And they used to have some other claims that don't really exist anymore, that the law doesn't really pursue anymore. I won't get into for alienation of affections and things like that they used to really, really do. And maybe they should bring them back. But really the main thing that we do right now is dissipation claims.
Well, what you're talking about, the grounds for divorce, and I don't know when it changed, but when I came into it, it's always irreconcilable differences.
That's because it's just the easiest one to prove. No, I mean, you don't have to prove anything.
Right.
Because who wants to prove adultery? Who wants to prove? So, they'll come in and the lady could have black eyes and venereal diseases, and I'll say, okay, irreconcilable differences. I'm not getting into any of that mess. Yeah. We're just going to come in and get in and get out, because it's the easiest one to do. So,
well, so do you think she should have to pay the money back, or just a civil fine? I guess is what I'm asking. Like, where are the consequences for? Where's the dissuasive factor? That's why we're so, because it strikes at our sense of justice and fairness, and we don't want to be just seen as paychecks,
and pride a little bit, right? A little pride in there.
Yeah, there's ego.
Yeah,
there's that male ego, but or here's a radical solution that the actual father have to pay back whoever paid out the money.
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, yes. But first and foremost, normally, if you're honest with yourself, that lady probably doesn't have a lot of money. Probably. Sometimes they do, but probably they don't. But then also, again, for you as a man, you need to know better. I'm downtown every day. I see great looking ladies all the time. And you better believe I got enough sense to not go chase those women. I got too much sense now. Maybe when I was a younger man, stupid. But as you get older, you realize, look, I got so much to lose, not only from getting a venereal disease from this lady, but she can mess up my finances and my reputation. And,
But that's something you've gained with wisdom. That's this 51-year-old Charles talking.
But guess where I got that wisdom from? It's from hard times. It's from making mistakes. So when those guys make those mistakes, that's a mistake that they made, and they just have to learn from it. There's no better teacher.
I agree, but is there, and this is where I'm getting at, we all make mistakes, we all gain wisdom, right? But should the mistake be so consequential? Isn't this a case where the crime exceeds the harm? Like, you know what I'm saying? Or the harm exceeds the crime. So
I'm not at all defending, the law. I just understand what it is. I understand the game. And so, first and foremost, I love my job because I get to talk to dudes and I kind of check them. And I don't care if you're a leader of a gang or a millionaire or whatever. If you come sit down and talk to me, I'm going to be really, really real with you and tell you, look, you got to know better than to be chasing all these ladies and pulling your pants down to everybody. So you had some issues because of, if you're honest with yourself, you're making some bad choices in life. And, I can go chase every woman I see, but I guarantee you, number one, I'd be in that graveyard over there and my money be funny. So, I really enjoy my job because once you pay me my retainer, I can tell you what I really think. And so I do. But yes, honestly, Mike, I'm on your side. I'm not at all arguing that we shouldn't, have some kind of laws on our side. If a lady's out there doing that, and that those women exist. Listen, I've been in this business 18. I've had about 1,000 cases, and I've seen those ladies where they are just going, child by this man, child by this man, and child by this man, and it's a financial upgrade. It's money. It's a source
that
of income.
and none of the 5 dudes are worth anything. It's like
a lot of times. But not, see, I also that's true a lot of times. But sometimes I will get into a sugar daddy kind of situation where I had a lady a long time ago who she had a very sad story where she was left on a doorstep as a child, but when she got old enough to become promiscuous, she was very promiscuous, and she was just collecting baby daddies and collecting checks. This is before the new system came into place where they look at things like that. But she was just 28% of this guy, 20% of that guy, 20%, and it was ridiculous. And and it was also, again, it was bad for the child because kids really cost a lot of money and they take up a lot of time if you really are being a parent. I don't mean to get religious with you, but I know that the Bible says you're supposed to talk to them when they get up, when they lay down, when they walk down the road, and then when they sit down. So you should be running your mouth all day with your child. My daughters, they've got my mind, and they tell you in a minute they think like I think because I talk to them all the time. I don't let them, just roam and make mistakes. They've got a lot of my opinions in their brains. So number one, I think that we have to have. It's nice if we have laws in place that dissuade that, but in all honesty, a lot of men, you just have to have a lot more wisdom than to sit up and chase a lot of women. You got to have, you got to have a little self-control and common sense.
But doesn't that place a higher burden on the guys?
Yes,
is that fair? Like, perfect example. We know that girls mature faster than boys. So I'll give you an example. A case we talked about, Zion and the porn star. I think it was Maya. I can't remember her name, but she gets on and blasts him, for not taking care of his child. And I'm like, well, sorry, love, you're 36. You've been in this business. He's 18, 19. Now I get it. We understand that's the adult factor, somehow that at the age of 18, they are miraculously converted to an adult. But where are the consequences for the women?
So think about how much Zion had to lose, or Sean Kemp, or how many kids he was making with these women. You're Sean Kemp. You're Zion. You have to know who you are.
But he's 18, Charles.
It doesn't matter.
He's 18, 19.
Okay, Michael. LeBron James, he was 18 or 19. And I don't, hold him up on a pedestal like some people do. But you have to acknowledge the fact that the man had no sense to say, I'm LeBron James. I can't walk around and make babies with everybody. I'm going to be a billionaire.
But is he the exception? I mean, there are people who are mature.
And honestly, if and I hate to say this because, we all were young. We all make mistakes and stuff. But no, he's Michael Jordan, by the way, did the same thing. He was going from city to city as a very young man with $1 million in his back pocket.
That's allegedly how him and his wife ended up marrying.
Sure.
He did not want to sully his reputation. She got pregnant. And they, from what I've, the tabloids, or not even the tabloids, the Lifetime story, or TikTok, that great educator, it was when he started seeing women outside of it that, she was like, okay, we're going to end this and stuff like that. Juanita is her name. And, I'm not trying to sully their reputation, whatever. They seem to have done the game right. Wasn't a lot of back and forth, and that requires a lot of maturity. So that's something we don't see a lot. It's people, when we get to people, they want to use it to punish the other person, to be punitive, and get upset with you when you're telling them, the court can't punish this person. They can't. You want them to punish them for your decision, and the court doesn't do that.
Well, it's really funny you say that, because when I read the Bible, it says basically don't give your life and don't give your years to the cruel, because a lot of times that's what it is, regardless of whether that person is using the court or some other situation. You're dealing with a person who's basically cruel to you for the rest of your life, training their kids to be against you, to be disruptive with you, to be a problem for you financially, to mess up your reputation. Here we are talking about Sean Kemp, about what he did when he was 19 or 20. That again, that's why, to go back to your first question, yes, I'm sorry, but yes, we as men, we do have a greater responsibility because we're the provider. And so if I look at a lady, right, and I sleep with this lady and I give her this child, and I look at another lady and I sleep with this lady and I give her a child, and I look at another lady and I sleep with this lady, and I keep going, I'm really kind of ruining their lives. They could have been happy married with somebody else.
But they chose you. They chose you.
No, come on now.
They chose. I mean, don't get me wrong, Church. You're suave, sophisticated.
Michael, wait a minute.
But they had a choice.
Michael, you know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I do.
I talked a lot of women into me when I was younger. So honestly, I was never pursued and raped by a lady. I was pursuing women when I was a womanizer. But I had to come to a knowledge of God, and I had to come to a knowledge of just being a man and a real man. That's not what men do. That's what boys do. But
you were a boy.
That's right. But what
you were a boy, and that's the same thing I'm saying with Zion.
Right.
But so why are they allowed their useful indiscretions? But I mean, I'm sorry if I'm Zion's father, I'm upset because we get into this dynamics where, it's creepy when a 46-year-old man is dating a 23-year-old girl. That's creepy. But we ain't saying nothing about this porn star dating. If a porn star came for me at 18, it's kind of hard to say no.
Listen, Mike, there's one little difference between me and Zion Williams. He's worth about $50 million, and he's a celebrity. So I'm sorry, but you're not Charles Bracey at 20. You are Zion Williams at 20. And so there's a difference. I'm sorry. So he has way more to lose.
I agree.
He has way more to lose.
I agree.
And by the way, fast forward or going backwards a little bit, if you remember, there was a time when Derrick Rose was about as high as you could get in the city. And then when he started going through that issue before, I think it was right after he got his injury with the allegations from the lady.
Which were false.
But you have to understand, and I guarantee Derrick Rose learned a lesson in life that, because he was a nice looking guy and he was rich, and everybody liked Derrick. Derrick is a nice guy. But he had to kind of come to an understanding, I'm Derrick Rose, and I can't just be with all these women, or maybe I should marry somebody because they'll mess you up. There's a lot of loser ladies out here.
I agree, but in that case with Derrick Rose, as I recall, he seemed to be of the mind that they were in a friendship with benefits kind of thing. Exactly. And so and it's easy to get lured into that just because you're young, you desire comfort, you're at the height of your sexuality.
And so Michael, listen, now I'm an uncle, right?
Right.
So I got nephews and I got a son. They're all in their 20s. And I sit them down and I talk to them about money, and I talk to them about child support, and I talk to them about the game. Because if you got an uncle, if you got a father, and he's talking in your ear about these women and the fact that you have a lot to lose. I don't mean to put anybody down, but a lot of women, like I think my wife is beautiful, but a lot of times when I see a lot of ladies, I say, I think a lot of them age like bread. You giving all your money in your life to this chick. Hey, look, you saw the lady from Jaws. You saw the lady from Jaws, right? Yeah. You saw her when she was in Jaws, and you saw her when she died. I was like, they age like bread. So you see them for that little short period of window, and you've sold your whole life down the river for that. You better find, like I was very fortunate to find a wife, and she's still a beautiful lady. She's a friend, but I would not. No, you are not only Derrick Rose, but a law student like yourself. You got a future, and you got to think about, hey, maybe I want to be married one day, and hey, maybe that lady over there, she wants a husband one day. She don't need to have somebody like me plan. But the good thing that you may have in your life, if you're fortunate, like my nephews, you got an uncle who you listen to him. Just listen to him, talk to him. We got a lot of sense. But back to the law, because we get a little sidetracked with all this. Back to the law. The divorce, the family law courts, out of control, Mike. When I'll go up to Waukegan or I'll go down, or I'll go to the page, or obviously I'm in the city, or I'm in Bridgeview, or I'm in Markham, or wherever I'm at. It's a lot of minorities, a lot of people that have your color, my color in those courts, even in Skokie.
Yeah, well, especially in paternity court.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, especially in paternity court. It's rare to see a white person, except for the judge, the bailiffs, in paternity court.
You know, I will say this: I'll see some white people. I'll see a lot of black and brown people. I don't see a lot of white people. I don't see a lot of Indian people, but I do see a lot of black and brown people in a lot of those courts wherever I'm at. And so what we got to do as minorities is really, look, get out of this game. Don't come into this courtroom with me, because you are already messing up if you're here. If you got a situation, and you may have a situation, try to make it work. That's my best advice to you, is try to, if you get married, stay married, whatever. Don't get in this game. It's going to mess up your reputation. It's going to mess up your finances. You got that parent is your child's mother or father. So don't come in the court with me, because I'm telling you, the judges are very, very tough. I had a guy just yesterday. He was a multimillionaire. He made $9 million a year. He's a brother. He was really doing his thing. And he fell on hard times, lost his business. And long story short, he got divorced. And as part of his divorce settlement, he had agreed to pay the lady $7,000. Well, you're making $9 million a year. Like, what is that to me? He did not know that he'd lose his business a few years later. And guess what? When he lost his business, you think that woman had any mercy on him? She came in. She wanted that $100,000 he was behind. And I went to court. He didn't come. And it's good that he didn't come, because guess what the judge was going to do?
Issue arrest warrant.
She's going to lock him up. And so, here's a brother. I mean, Bentley, $9 million. And he's a cool brother. When I talk to him, he's just a man after my own heart. I just really like him. But, so just be careful in this game. I would tell even a married man, stay married. Apologize when you ain't even in the wrong. Just make it work, because this game sucks and nobody wins, especially your children.
So when it comes to the child support, you say that you saw a lot of brown people in court. A lot of brown people when you
Black
went
and brown,
yes. Yeah. So do you think that it was more of a cultural issue, because maybe a lot of African American people and Spanish, brown people don't believe in like abortion?
It's just,
well, I can't speak for them.
Yeah.
I can only speak for my tribe, but I do know that excuse me, when I come to court, I know that both, regardless of what race we're talking about, those people love their children, but I just would always caution people, like, look, try to do one thing that has always struck me as being wise. If you can settle out of court before you get to court, like I just told you, if you go to Illinois Child Support Estimator, you can figure out how much child support should be. If you can talk amongst each other and try to figure out, hey, look, let's do a 50-50 split, or I'll have more summertime and more springtime and more wintertime, and you have them during the school year. Try to figure it out yourself. Don't try to come to court, because I'm telling you, it's not going to go well for you. It's not going to go well for your child. It's not going to go well for the other parent. So, but back to the issue of me seeing a lot of minorities in the court. Why is it like that? I'm not 100% sure. Somewhere along the way, I think we, maybe people have not taken marriage as serious as they should. Maybe, I don't know what it is or why it is that way. But all I know is when I come to the court, it's just what I see. I'd love to lie to you and tell you I don't see what I see, but I see what I see. My eyes don't lie to me. So
I'll tell you what, there's a lot of animosity, a lot of anger. And you almost have to be dispassionate about it. Like, you have to sit there and say, okay. And here's the thing. If you're bringing him to court because he's not paying child support, that's one thing if you have it and not paying it. But there are consequences. I had a guy, he was working in a car wash. He was the maintenance man for the car wash. And, he was a salesman. There's a question whether or not he was laid off or did he quit? Mm-hmm. And if there's a belief that I don't even know why this exists as a matter of law, but there's this law that says if you quit your job, then we can hold you to the standard of what you should pay. Mm-hmm. If rationally, if you think about it and you just say, let's give every guy the common sense that God gave a Billy Goat. Nobody's quitting their job to avoid child support obligations.
Well, you see, there was a case that started that. So there was a medical doctor who was an anesthesiologist,
high earner, right?
And the lady was this is the 28% days,
Yeah.
And so she's taking 28% of that, 400,000 or whatever he was making. And so what he did was he quit his job and went to work at McDonald's. So the case law that started that was that case. And so what the judge said was, I'll tell you what, you can work at McDonald's if you want to, but you're gonna still pay the child support as if you were an anesthesiologist. So man, they've tried everything in this game.
Yeah.
There's nothing new under the sun.
But I think we look at exceptions and try to apply a rule. That is an extreme exception. Most guys, if the average income across the United States now is $50,000, when Charles and I started in the early 2000s, let's just say the average income was 30. Right. So I know where we were and how we were struggling, and we're high. We have high degrees. So why is there this presumption that he quit this job, but you're still imputing the income? The point of it is if you are there and you're trying to compel him to do something, and he's struggling, or he's, trying to get a job, and here's the thing, especially now, as Charles alluded to, 51% of women now make more than 48% of the men. Like 51% of women have higher degrees than men. So we have to change our mentality about what it means to be a contributor to a child's life. We have to start thinking of other things besides finances. Don't get me wrong. Money is important. It's right up there with oxygen, but it ain't the be all end all, And so we need to look at that first and foremost. All right. Are there other ways that this man can contribute or things like that? Because here's the thing. You lock him up. Now he's going to lose his home. Or what's the thing with the driver's license? They suspend your driver's license. Well, the little bit of money he was making for DoorDash, Uber, and Uber Foods. Now you've taken away his income. He's barely making it. And we have to come up with creative solutions, more so. And don't get me wrong. And part of it is, and we'll get into this later because we got to start wrapping up, it's just our American system. As Charles alluded to, it is expensive. If I had my druthers, I open up a daycare and a funeral home right next to each other and just be making money hand over fist. Literally, when I was working for the state, every paycheck went to daycare. Literally, every paycheck went to daycare. So we need to start thinking creative, and that's the problem. We're putting it all on the people where there's room for government intervention.
Well, I'll play devil's advocate with you. I do think that the adversarial nature of child support proceedings, it is a necessary evil. And again, you're talking to a former player. So, when you understand that there are consequences for your acts, I can talk a lot of ladies into giving me their phone numbers and going on about, my evening with them. But when you start to understand, look, I don't want to be paying my money out to some lady that I may never even see again and be on the hook for this. I think that all those consequences, including being arrested for non-payment, it's a necessary evil. And by the way, some of these guys are slick as grease too. They'll quit their job and they'll start a business because they know that you can't, really trace their money, and they're getting paid in cash. And so sometimes one of the worst, people you used to sue for child support used to be a drug dealer. Now for me, it's just a business owner, because it's very hard to discern how much money this guy's making.
All right. Well, we want to thank y'all for tuning in for another episode of Elevated Vibes. Charles, give them your phone number. Charles Bracey of the Bracey Kelly Law Firm. What's your number?
312-445-9500. That's 312-445-9500.
All right. We hope that you have been raised and your mind has been elevated. This is Elevated Vibes. We'll catch you next week. Have a good week.